This book is truly a testament to the fact that if you feel like you have a story or you have art inside of you, you have to share it, regardless of if you're quote unquote commercially successful on your first couple tries. And that book that we're talking about this month is Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stuart. I actually had picked this book up in 2021 when I was in London, and I was intrigued by the fact that it won the Booker Prize in 2020. I don't put all of my weight onto like award categories, but it does play a role in my biases towards certain books. For example, I know that Booker Prize books are ones that I generally enjoy, so if I see a winner of a Booker Prize, I'm generally going to read it. And also something that intrigued me towards it was the fact that I was going to Scotland at the time, and this book takes place in Glasgow. It's a heavy book. It's a beautiful book. So let's just get into it. So Shuggie Bain follows the titular character Shuggie and his working class family through post-industrial Glasgow in the 1980s. So this is post-Margaret Thatcher. Work is low, poverty is high. They're living in tenement houses, and Glasgow as a neighborhood is kind of described as cramped. People living in one room. There's little work for little pay. People are living paycheck to paycheck. They're often spending their paychecks on alcohol or these vices that will make life feel just a little bit better. Unemployment allotments are something that people are desperately looking for. So this is kind of the background of what we get of Glasgow in the 1980s. So Shuggie's mother, Agnes, I would argue, is the other protagonist of this book. And Agnes is both Shuggie's hero and the cause of his deep-rooted pain and trauma. She's unfulfilled with her life. She turns to alcohol early in Shuggie's life, and he barely knows a childhood without her drinking. And I think that this is a story that is common to a lot of kids of parents with alcoholism, that you can love somebody so much and still carry the trauma that they've given you through growing up from having to deal with that. Shuggie's father, his nickname is Shug, is somewhat out of the picture. When we start the book, he is in the picture, but he works as a taxi cab driver. He's not making a ton of money. He's looking for fulfillment elsewhere, and he starts to have an affair with another woman. Agnes finds out, obviously is very distraught. Shug at this point has moved them to a different house outside of Agnes's parents' house. So now he leaves the family in this apartment that he separated from her parents. So she and the children are feeling even more alone. Agnes was always described as this beautiful, striking woman, always put together. Compared to Elizabeth Taylor, she's always fashionable, even though they didn't have money. She made neighbors jealous, and they were even uncertain of her promiscuity and having her around children and things like that because she wasn't a homely Protestant woman, but she never seemed to care. And she always taught Shuggie that he shouldn't care what other people think either. Because of Agnes's alcoholism, Shuggie's older sister Catherine marries quite young and moves to South Africa as soon as she can to escape that alcoholism. And the only times that we really see her come back throughout the book are when they're having these occasional phone calls. But even then, she never talks to her mother. So already there's a seed planted of how deep Agnes's alcoholism is affecting her children. And Shuggie's older brother, nicknamed Leek, he doesn't seem to have the same forgiveness for Agnes that Shuggie does either. I mean, he sticks around as long as he can because there's not really anywhere else for him to go. As a young boy, he's not old enough to really work yet. He's still going to school, but he feels like his sister abandoned them as well, where she got to escape to a perfect life and Leek and Shuggie were left to clean up the mess, basically. So Shuggie is often called soft and effeminate, and he's bullied for being effeminate growing up. People think it's because his mother coddles him, and that they think that because he doesn't have a father figure around, that this is turning him into a woman. The exploration of sexuality begins while Shuggie's in this sort of 5 to 10-year-old age range, where he notices he feels different from the other kids. He doesn't feel like the other boys. He doesn't like girls in the same way. He's not interested in the same things. Leek tells him that he walks differently, that he talks differently. He talks posh. He is always well-dressed, well-mannered, keeping his hair tidy, his face clean. All of these things that his mother taught him to have pride in his appearance are things that make him stand out to the rest of the neighborhood. So Leek tries to help Shuggie to quote-unquote man up, to not be so doting on Agnes, to make a way for himself, but Shuggie just keeps coming back to his mom. And he ends up missing a lot of school, actually, to act as his mother's caretaker during her alcoholic episodes. He keeps the house clean. He is cooking for her, making sure she eats and doesn't choke on her own vomit. And mind you, this kid is, again, like between 5 and 10. This is a really, really small child who is having this responsibility. His older brother doesn't want to deal with it. His older sister left. His father left. So he already, at this very, very young age, feels this responsibility to be caretaker for his caretaker. And he's put in impossible situations where, for example, Agnes will go through phases where she says she's going to stop drinking, but she just needs a little sip here and there to keep off the withdrawal symptoms. And Shuggie is the one who has to kind of manage these episodes, where he is in charge of allotting how much alcohol she can have to ease her withdrawals. And that's not something that should be put on any child, regardless of age. No one should have to be in charge of their mother in that way. So throughout the book, things seem to get better when Agnes starts seriously going to AA meetings. She gets a job. She eventually realizes that Big Shug isn't coming back. She needs to support her kids. She gets a job at a gas station. It keeps her away from alcohol at nights because she's busy working. And she meets a really nice man named Eugene who doesn't abuse her. And she seems ready to open herself back up to love and to the world post-alcohol. And things really are turning a new leaf for her. Shuggie starts feeling better. He starts feeling like he has more control of his life, but because this caretaker role was taken away from him, he feels a little bit lost and confused in the world because for so long he's been taking care of his mother. But he's still so happy that this is the alternative. She even reaches 1 year of sobriety, and her Alcoholics Anonymous friends decide to throw her a 1-year sobriety party, which Eugene, her new boyfriend, comes to. And Eugene, from that day, just seems very curious in what Agnes's definition of an alcoholic is. Because to him, Agnes is still beautiful. Agnes is still well kept. These other people that he was meeting at this party are people who seem desperate for alcohol, or they're people who look a bit more haggard or like life has run them down because of their alcoholism. And to him, those two things don't compute with Agnes. And he really starts getting on this whole train of wanting her to be normal, of not like other alcoholics. She's not like those other alcoholics. She might have had a temporary problem, but she's not like those people. So he really wants her to begin casual drinking. He thinks that it was a temporary problem that she had and that this is something that normal people do. They have wine with dinner. They're able to go out for a beer with friends. And he really, really seems stuck on this. So one night out on a date, he convinces her to just get 1 glass of wine. And she reluctantly agrees after this has been a topic of conversation for many, many months. She has the 1 glass of wine throughout the entire dinner. She doesn't love it. And she's feeling really proud of herself that maybe I am not like that. Maybe I am someone who can now be a casual drinker after so many years lost to alcoholism. And this kind of sober confidence that she has, making her think that she's no longer an alcoholic. The way that it's written in the book is that the chapter ends with they go to the bar and she decides to just order 1 more gin and tonic, and then another, and then another, and then another. And the next chapter begins with Eugene having left her. Agnes is right back where she started in the deep thralls of alcoholism. And Shuggie is back having to take care of his mother. So Eugene leaves, hating that this monster exists, even though he led her back to this illness, to this addiction. She gets drunker and drunker. She starts going to parties again. She starts doing dangerous things, not caring about the outcomes or the consequences. And one night she is sexually assaulted by a taxi cab driver. Her depression just worsens. As the alcoholism worsens, she loses her job that she had, and now it is leading to multiple suicide attempts. And each time, Shuggie is the one who has to clean up the mess. He is the one who saw his mother come back into her beautiful self while she was sober. She was someone happy. She was someone ambitious. She was someone loving. And now he has to see her again, not get out of bed. He has to take her to the hospital when she attempts to kill herself. He has to clean up her vomit, to force feed her, to get her again to be manipulated into these little sips of alcohol so that her withdrawals aren't that bad. He feels like he's just feeding her alcoholism, but at the same time, he doesn't want to see his mother suffer. And it was like he loved her so much that he hated her for what she was doing to herself and to him. So there's this constant battle of resentment and love that he carries throughout all of this time. In a drunken rage, she kicks Leek out of the house, who wants Shuggie to come with him, but Shuggie stays with Agnes because he can't bear to leave his mother, because who would take care of her if he left her? Agnes and Shuggie eventually have to move to a smaller apartment in the inner city. She says and she swears up and down that she'll change, that she'll get better this time. But of course, she doesn't. And Shuggie seems to grow more and more resentful as he's bullied more and more in his new school, in his new neighborhood. As readers, you start to feel the tear of years and years of being caretaker to a parent. And I think it's best described in the review from The Guardian, where they say, as he grows and Agnes sinks, there's a sense of inevitability to the story, but that does not make it predictable. Rather, the reader is gripped, hoping desperately that the boy and his mother free themselves from the twin traps of poverty and alcoholism. That's how it felt throughout the book, where I wanted so desperately for there to be a different ending, even though I knew what was coming. And eventually we do come to that point where Shuggie comes home. Agnes is asleep, drunk in a chair. She begins to choke on her saliva in her sleep, and Shuggie watches. It might be a mercy to let her go, to himself and for her, and he lets it happen. So she passes in her sleep. Shuggie gives her one last kiss, and the book ends. Not quite. There is a 10-year later, Shuggie's 15, he's with his friend Leanne, and Leanne is trying to bring her mother, her also alcoholic, homeless mother, some tinned food to take care of herself. And the reflection of this flash forward, after all that we've just witnessed in the flashback, gives an idea to how Shuggie has grown in the past 10 years, in that he sees himself reflected in his friend Leanne, where she so desperately wants to try and save her mother, who won't do anything to save herself. And he knows what that's like, and so he's there for Leanne as a friend, to be by her side and let her love her mother, because nothing's going to take that away from her. So the book was, it's heavy. It's so beautifully written, but the themes that run throughout, I was emotionally attached to Shuggie and Agnes, and it was so weird sometimes how mature Shuggie was, and you remember he's like 5 years old, a toddler basically, saying and doing these things because he's been forced to grow up. What does it mean to feel responsible for your own mother, the person who gave you life, when everyone else has abandoned her? Does the love outweigh the pain? Do the good times outweigh the bad? That seems to be what Shuggie deals with in the trauma of his life. And it's really interesting that we don't see him later in life. We see him at the oldest at 15, where he's still a kid, and yet he feels so grown and so much like he's dealing with his own things that we know. Addiction, obviously, is a huge theme throughout this book. Agnes is addicted to the bottle. Big Shug is addicted to chasing the next high. Shuggie's addicted to his mother's love, and everyone just seems to be coping with the pain of the environment that they're in. This is a highly political book, I would argue. The environment that they're in causes so much pain and trauma that leads to all of these further consequences. And I think it's a very smart exploration of post-Thatcherism in Glasgow and what some of those policies and the effects of the government had on a community and how decimated communities can be by politicians who don't care about them. The theme also of sexuality comes up. Shuggie is exploring himself, not in an explicit way necessarily, but he feels different. He's always felt different. He doesn't feel like other boys. He's not interested in women in the same way as other boys. And because this book is described as like a pseudo fiction book, maybe based off of the author's own growing up in Scotland, it feels a bit refreshing to have a book that encounters the topic of repression of a deeply religious and conservative society and coming to terms with sexuality amidst all of that without that being the main topic of the book, if that makes sense. It feels more like a theme that bleeds together with the other things of, again, poverty, repression, conservative values, how all of those environmental factors affect a boy growing up. Money obviously comes up through the book a lot. There's some really interesting imagery like coins clinking in pockets or bills being handed out or the unemployment book and what it means to take these coupons to and from the store. It feels very transactional throughout the book. And there's always this absence or this presence of money where when things are going well, the descriptions of things are a lot more flowery, a lot more beautiful, a lot more rich. And when money's not there, things are dull, things are dry, things are unexciting. With poverty and with money comes inherent pride that you see a lot in any human being. When they feel as though they are lacking of something, there's something else that needs to be bolstered in human nature. And a lot of times that is pride. Like I said, Agnes takes a lot of pride in her appearance, no matter how poor they are. She always wants to be well dressed. She always wants to be at the forefront of people's minds. Because for her, it doesn't matter how bad your circumstances are, to have pride in your appearance is to have pride in yourself. So she imparts that onto Shuggie throughout. I grew up queer in a religious setting, but I would say my repression was much lighter than what I imagine Shuggie and the author had to live through and what many people still do have to live through. And I will never understand the pain of having to watch a parent drink themselves to death or to oblivion, or the complicated feelings that come with loving someone so much but hating what they're doing to you or to themselves. But I think what really struck me about Douglas Stuart's writing is the way that I was able to feel all of those emotions, at least in part, and to share in that experience with him. And what's even more shocking to me is that this is Douglas Stuart's debut novel. Like, this is his first published novel. It took a decade to write, apparently. It was rejected by 30 publishers. And the struggle inherent in its existence bolsters that light of hope and prosperity for what we want for Shuggie. It's also what we want for ourselves and what the author wants for himself. And to have your first book be the 2020 Booker Prize winner is just a testament to sharing your art, sharing your story, because someone out there cares, someone out there relates to it, and those who don't relate to it will be touched by it. So I think it was a profoundly moving, beautiful picture of Scotland and the feelings of growing up queer with an alcoholic mother in a religious poverty-stricken city. I mean, there's sadness, fear, there's anger rampant throughout, but there is so much love and sacrifice and devotion. And though it's a really tough subject matter, the two main characters keep the buoyancy and the novel lighter by living in their fully fleshed out, kaleidoscoped self. Let me know if you've read Shuggie Bain or if you've read any of Douglas Stewart's other books. I think he has 2 more. I haven't read Young Mungo yet, and I haven't read John of Johns, which I think just came out this year. But after reading this book, I am so interested in the rest of his writing because truly it was quick paced. You wouldn't believe that such beautiful language would come at such a casual reading experience, if that makes sense. Let me know your thoughts and happy Pride, and I will see you next time. Okay, bye.